Hello, guys. I'm Chris Fellabaum, Senior Consultant here at Rizing, or one of them, and welcome to the H1 2021 SuccessFactors Learning Release Analysis and Chit Chat. And I am joined by my esteemed longtime colleague, Carey Ross. Hello, Carey.
Hi, Chris. Hello,
Hey.
everybody.
Long time no talk.
Happy National Learning Day.
I did not know that. I guess I
I
should.
made that up. I made it up.
Good
It's
one.
National Denim Day, though. I had to dig out my denim shirt.
Oh, man. I should have dug my jacket out from school stuff. So H1 release here already. I think we were just talking about that, but how time flies, right?
It really does. It seems like we were just here talking about H2 2020.
H2 2020 it was. And, on the heels of that release, this one really has big shoes to fill, right? Because
Absolutely.
that one was certainly significant in that it forced administrators for learning to move to a completely new UI, UX, whatever you want to call it. And, honestly, my impression of the H1 release is that it's more about features being sunsetted and things being deprecated than it is new features, with a few notable exceptions, as you know.
Right. Still more, a lot of stuff for admins, though.
That is true. Some new goodies. Let's talk about things that are going away first, though, because, in doing analyses, impact analyses for our customers, there are relatively few customers impacted by either of these, kind of retiring features. But I think depending on, especially on how long a customer has been on SuccessFactors Learning, I mean, there are customers who have been on that platform for at least 12 years, I think. Some of these may have a significant impact. So hopefully those customers have been able to get ahead of that. But the first one, of course, is the Road to Retirement for PQE, or Plateau Question Editor, as it's also
I feel like
known.
we've been talking about that being retired for years.
Well, you can't say they didn't warn us, right? So,
no, yeah, many years.
And PQE, of course, in speaking with newer customers, many of them really don't know what that is, apart from seeing a reference in the content menu to, exams legacy. But PQE, of course, for those who don't know, is the legacy or original native exam tool in SuccessFactors Learning. And true to its name, I mean, it dates back squarely to the Plateau days. And that's going to be fully retired in the H2 21 release, in favor of the assessment tool, of course, which is much newer and much nicer. We saw a couple new enhancements to the assessment tool with the last release, again, kind of paving the way for this one to go away. But in H1, we're seeing role permissions for creating legacy exams, creating any new ones, and even the ability to associate them with items is gone. So that will no longer be possible in production with the May release, right?
Yeah, they definitely took a long time, which is great, to give plenty of time to get over to the new assessments and exams, and being able to migrate those and make it easier for clients. So yeah, I think that hopefully those who are affected by it have definitely been planning it for a while and won't have a major effect right now. But I'm sure there's going to be something.
Well, yeah, it never fails. But to your point, there are some new tools in this release to kind of smooth that transition for customers who are have yet to kind of get on that, right? There will be a new export data tool or a new template in export data to export legacy PQE exams. And that's designed to kind of work in concert with the existing assessment import template. So from what I gather, it's relatively smooth to kind of export and then re-import them.
And I also saw that with the item connector, we'll be able to associate the assessments.
Exactly.
And so that's a big thing. I was talking to somebody yesterday that was really excited about that.
Yeah, that's one of the first changes I've seen to the item connector in a long time. So good stuff.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if you're in this boat and this is news to you, certainly we can help if you're a Rizing customer, but also there's a lot more information on the deprecation of PQE and how to leverage that migration, the export import, out on the customer community. The other thing that is kind of is definitely going away, not kind of, is native login for administrators. So specific to learning administration native login. So if you're one of those customers who logs in via the customername.plateau.com native login URL for learning administration, whether that's for convenience, I like logging in that way. I'm going to miss it. Or whether there are other reasons, maybe external administrators who are not on platform. Either way, that capability is already gone in preview. If you've hit any of your bookmarks, you've been redirected to the BizX login page. There is a workaround, however. The user-facing native login URL and capability is sticking around, of course. And as long as your admin account in LMS has a related user and is associated with a user account, you will be able to log in and then make that hop over to the admin side.
One thing with that, this is definitely a big deal, and I've had many conversations with a lot of clients recently about that. There's not a lot that are logging in natively through production, but a lot through their stage instance. The one thing to think about that workaround too, though, is they'd have to have a password to log in as a user because their admin password doesn't work. And depending on how the user was created, some of that password reset isn't available in the new UI.
Great point. Yeah, because accounts that originate from BizX, of course, are pretty much completely locked down, with the exception of custom fields. So the workaround there, if you're in that boat, the workaround that SAP is recommending is just to create a dedicated user account natively in LMS, right, and associate with that. Obviously, best case is log into BizX platform, whatever you want to call it, and click on Learning Administration right there on the homepage. That's
exactly
the preferred
method. I've been working with a lot of people to identify what admins don't have a user in BizX and getting those created so that they can just log in that way. Yep. Because eventually that user native login will go away too. So that workaround won't last forever. So it's good to have that plan.
Well, and that's a good point that you raise. And it's a good reminder for everybody out there that it's not going away per se, right? It's changing where the authentication method on the back end will be moving to IAS. So from a user experience standpoint, if you have a lot of external learners using that user native login URL, I don't think, or at least they're saying that experience will not change. But there is work to be done implementing IAS in platform to kind of pave the way for that, because apparently that is still coming in H2, kind of forcing customers to migrate those LMS-only native users to use IAS instead. So more information to come on that.
The IAS is popping up for a lot of different things.
You do a lot of work on the analytics side, so that's a huge dependency there, right?
Yeah.
Also, kind of on the same topic, SAP will no longer be supporting new implementations of what it's been called various things, but the external user and platform feature, which allowed you to integrate with platform in a way that a user requesting an account via a site, that's a mouthful, generated a user account in platform, which was kind of tagged as external. And that was really for those customers who wanted learning only users, but also wanted to leverage the JAM integration potentially, or also the BizX mobile app, the SuccessFactors mobile app.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of reaching the end of its life. I don't think they're going to remove that capability for customers who have implemented that, but it will no longer be an available solution moving forward. So let's talk about some of the additions, right? Now that we're talking about things that are dead and dying.
The fun stuff.
Yes, and I'll tell you what, you could easily look past these improvements or kind of incremental improvements to the new admin UI if you weren't, it's like a small town if you blink when you're driving through it. But I can't be the only one, and I know I'm not in talking with customers. Having to click right on that little caret, well, let me do it backwards, in the menu header for the new
drives
admin UI,
me nuts.
it really got old. And
yeah.
Obviously, they've made the change, and you can try this out in preview to where you can click anywhere in the menu bar. So again, small things, right? But when you're in there, working day to day and hitting learning administration hard, it makes a big difference.
Just when I'm used to clicking on the caret, now we can go to how I really want to do it. Yeah, I think that's probably one of my favorite things, and it's just so simple.
You know what I showed a customer this morning on a call, and they just about lost it. I mean, they were like, this is LMS geek goodness. They've also added a search feature at the top of the menu structure, kind of shades of that power search that went away with the old UI. Mm-hmm. But literally, and a great example to try at home, guys, is type in direct in that search bar and watch the direct link tool come up, and it gives you a shortcut right to any applicable navigation that kind of meets those keywords. It's slick in execution. It's very nice.
Yeah, I'm feeling like that is working. I like it better than the old power search. It's a much nicer, updated type feature.
Agreed. The other enhancement, and this change didn't bother me so much, but we've literally gotten like 10 tickets on it in managed services, right? The item classification. Of course, in the old UI, you would select the item classification first, creating a new item. And with the new UI, it moved to kind of more of a dynamic assignment where based on actions you would take after creating the item, it would automatically assign it, like creating an agenda template would make it instructor-led. But it seemed to be kind of a universal source of angst or confusion. So they are bringing back that as part of the new item dialogue.
I think that's a really good thing, just based on, like you said, the tickets that we've gotten about it. In the old UI, when you would create something and you'd select that it was instructor-led, it kind of takes care of that for you when it creates that agenda. So it does create more steps to not have it there.
Very true.
In a way. So definitely, I think that's going to be huge because it helps, because we've had a lot of confusion of why can't I schedule this training? Well, because it needs an agenda first before you can schedule it. It has to have content to be online type of thing. So.
And you don't run into that as much with creating an online item, of course, because you're probably using the import content tool.
Right.
So the other feature that's pretty notable, and if you look at the What's New viewer for learning, there are probably, I think, something like 5 related separate features that all have to do with the new Course Home blended view. So a little history on Course Home. Course Home it's been around as a feature for, I think, 2 or 3 years,
right?
At least in some phase of beta or whatnot. I'll put it out there, not the most popular feature from an adoption standpoint that I've seen. It's a beautiful UI, and if you don't know what it is, it's an update to the item details view for users, an update to the item content view. it kind of replaces all of those actions when you click on Start Course or click on a course details. And it's been available for online and instructor-led classifications. But there have been just a lot of little things that have kind of added up to kind of inhibit adoption, I guess. And this is interesting because this is being touted as an addition, right, which is a course home blended view or instructor-led online, whatever it's called now. In reality, however, this is a little bit of a redo and a little bit of a reimagining for all of the item classifications. And they've kind of moved it to an early adopter, I'm making air quotes, an early adopter status, which certainly implies turn this on in staging, evaluate it, maybe give it a few releases. But they are going to be kind of reimagining, to some degree, I think, the online and instructor-led item classification views based on this new course home, kind of platform, I guess. And they're referring to it some places as course home UXR, this new direction. Okay. But yeah, I know probably customers who have adopted this are a little bit in the minority. Maybe they're kind of bleeding edge. But I would definitely, true to the early adopter label, play around with this, keep an eye on it over at least this release and the next release. But look at the release notes too, because it gives a really nice summary of the experience without course home blended turned on and the experience with it turned on. And that's right there in the What's New viewer. And
so if somebody wanted to do that, you're basically stating maybe turn it on in stage and play with it over the next couple of releases. Don't wait until you're ready to turn it on to start playing with it, but try it out and see what it's like, because it is going to be a pretty big change, right?
It is a big change, and it's it's the most prominent type of change, which is to your full end user base, which certainly implies some change management.
When that's turned on, is it turned on for all items, or do you then turn it on at an individual item basis for those clients who might want to turn it on?
It is global. That's a really good question. Yep. I believe there may be still some exceptions where certain classifications do not have that view, but the notes certainly will make that clear. The question that I'm getting about this in our customer meetings, primarily, when are they going to sunset the existing view? Do I have to do this? And SAP has been pretty outspoken that there's no plan to do that at this point. I'm sure they will at some point,
someday.
But usually that implies a couple years down the road, right?
Well, it looks like we have a little question here, Chris, about the course home. Do we know, does that support OCN?
To my knowledge, it still doesn't. That's kind of the exception or the gap that I'm referring to. I'd have to go back and look at the documentation with this new course home blended. My guess is that we'll see that become available probably in H2, but to my knowledge, that is still a gap.
Okay. Looks like kind of the same question, saying they don't see it working for external items. Kind of the same thing there. Those would be the OCN items.
Correct. Anything brought in through the Open Content Network integration is classified as external item classification. Yep. And that has been a notable gap to this point.
So just like, probably something we'll see in the future, since now we're seeing instructor-led, blended, and as you said, more and more of it's being kind of reimagined for that. So I would definitely keep a watch out for it.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for the question. All right, this takes us to what I think is probably the biggest ticket item in this release. And, well, technically it's not in this release, it's being announced with this release, but that is the availability of learning schemas or learning data in stories in people analytics.
Absolutely.
I know you have some opinions on this, so I'm gonna turn this over to you. But
Yeah.
worth pointing out first that if you are interested in becoming an early adopter, there's an early adopter program for this to where SAP will work with you to make that available within People Analytics for you. They're anticipating it's going to be a phased rollout across data centers starting toward the end of June, early July. Just speculating that they may be starting with like the DC4, DC8 data centers, and then moving to others. And there's a link in our learning analysis blog on the Rizing website to that early adopter program. But you could also easily find it in the customer community just by going to the learning topic. And I think under the innovation alerts, but there's probably a tile for it as well. So tell me your thoughts on.
Well, I think that this is great. Definitely much needed. Obviously, the story reports, I would say from the clients that I talk to, we don't have, similar to Course Home, there's not as many people on it just yet because there's definitely a plan around getting that enabled. Story reports just in general. Goes back to that whole IAS needed for external learners. You also need that to turn on what's called story reports on the platform side. From just an overall learning reporting perspective, I think that this is going to be really good. One, obviously, we have our regular standard learning reports that are on the learning administration side. Not as much flexibility with those reports. Not real easy to customize them, add, remove fields, unless you just, export to Excel and then remove them manually without using the external learning report designer tool.
Right.
Well, we've kind of evolved with that, and obviously we know that we can turn on, if you haven't yet and you want it, this is definitely something we can help you with. We can turn on the learning data set also in the Canvas reports from the platform side, and you can access your learning data there. There's a few gaps, a little bit of limitations, but still overall you can get some really good reports to put, pivot charts, tables, your pie charts, things like that on some of that learning. So that's big. And so I'm really happy from the analytics side of me to be able to see that learning will be available in the report stories. Now, with the report stories right now, the learning data won't be able to be joined with the other tables, like with performance and Employee Central and those types of things. But the nice thing is in one story report, you can have learning data and performance and EC data. They just can't be joined together, if that makes sense. You can have multiple queries in one full story. I think eventually that will come, and it will be amazing when that happens. But this is definitely a great step towards that, and a great step towards integrating that learning data with the other data in SuccessFactors.
Yeah, I agree. Any ability that expands reporting capability for learning is to be celebrated, right? Because the options are limited now.
Right.
Obviously, PRD, as it's usually known, or the report designer tool native to LMS, is not every customer's cup of tea.
No, it's very SQL based, and you have to understand that a bit to be able to do it. And with story reports, with Canvas reports, it really puts the control in the client hands on being able to create those custom views of learning, which is great.
Agreed. Well, good stuff. I'm still hoping that with the H2 21 release, not to rush things, but I'm still hoping that we'll see some new shiny bells and whistles, some true new features versus evolution in the UI. I think SuccessFactors has been smart to step back and put their efforts into moving the UI ahead. It's, for one thing, Flash was going away, so they didn't really have a choice there. But also on the user side with Course Home and the direction they're going with that. But I think there's room for new features, new ways to deliver training. And it's the H2 release will be near Christmas, so maybe we'll see some good LMS geek gifts with that.
Yes, that would be nice. I think we've got some good stuff here, though, in this release, even if they're just simple, like being able to click on that menu.
Oh, yeah.
Big thing.
But, and, bottom line for a lot of customers I'm speaking with, of course, is what do we have to do? Is there anything to, anything we just absolutely have to do? And I would summarize it this way. If you're not depending on native login for LMS users, we already talked about administrator login. There are workarounds there. But if you have a large population of LMS-specific users who do not exist in platform and who are logging in via that Plateau URL, definitely action is needed, right? Make sure that you're working on upgrading to IAS at the platform level, and more information will be coming prior to H2, I think, on migrating those LMS-only users to that new authentication method.
Right.
So that's definitely a big one. It's the minority of customers who would be in that boat, but I know they're out there.
Absolutely. What I'm mentioning to any analytics clients, and I would say the same here, get a plan around the IAS or Identity Authentication Service sooner rather than later. You don't want to wait until you're rushed or forced to do it if you actually have that need right now, especially in learning. I think we're on a little bit tighter schedule with that than we are even with, story reports. You don't have to enable story reports at this point. But that's going to be really important to start thinking about now.
Yep, agreed. Other things, what's in it for me? Obviously, if you do still have a number of legacy exams or assessments that you depend on and you measure training performance on, make sure that you're migrating those and that you have a plan for doing that. And again, we're always happy to help our customers with challenges like that. Beyond that, I think those would be the two biggies in terms of what do I need to be focusing on, what do I have to be doing.
Yeah, so. I agree for that. Some good stuff here, important things. I'm not seeing any other questions right now in the chat.
Yeah, and I think that's about all I've got. Again, it's not a huge release, a very manageable one, and again, only sort of strongly motivating for isolated customers who are depending on those specific features. But yeah,
right.
I appreciate your partnership in this as always, Carey.
Absolutely. Always fun to have a chat with you, Chris. Just as a reminder to everybody, later today we have the comp and variable pay release live on LinkedIn. And tomorrow we've got analytics. Join me with another coworker, Jennifer Hamilton. We'll be talking about analytics. Excited to present all of the different release features on all of the different modules. So hopefully those are very helpful to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If that's,
thanks, Chris.
I'm dating myself with that term, aren't I? All right. Have a great day.
You too.